According to Aztec mythology, when the gods decided to sacrifice one of their own, that god disguised himself to escape, transforming into a salamander that could never be found, never grow up, never die. The hero of that legend actually exists, the axolotl. And remarkably, this small pink creature really does seem to cheat death by regrowing its severed heart, its spinal cord, even part of its own brain. So is this really a miracle, or is it explainable biology? Scientifically known as Ambystoma mexicanum, it's commonly called the Mexican salamander, or sometimes, mistakenly, the Mexican walking fish, though it isn't a fish at all. It's a true amphibian. It belongs to the class Amphibia, the order Caudata, the tailed salamanders, and the family Ambystomatidae, which also includes close relatives like the widespread North American tiger salamander. Adult axolotls typically reach 20 to 25 centimeters in length, though some individuals grow as large as 45 centimeters. They weigh between 60 and 225 grams. Their front legs have 4 toes, their hind legs 5, a fairly typical asymmetry among salamanders. In the wild, their natural coloring is dark brown with black speckling, but decades of captive breeding have produced albino white and the now famous pink leucistic variety recognized worldwide. That pink appearance actually comes from a lack of pigment, which lets the blood vessels beneath the skin show through. 3 pairs of feathery external gills sprouting from either side of the head, small legs, and a fin running from the back of the head to the tip of the tail make it instantly distinguishable from other salamanders. The axolotl's natural range is astonishingly narrow. It exists in only one place on Earth, the Xochimilco Lake and canal system south of Mexico City. It once also lived in nearby Lake Chalco, but that population is now believed extinct. Xochimilco itself is remarkable in its own right, famous for the chenampas, artificial floating farming islands built by the Aztecs centuries ago, a unique agricultural system that earned the area UNESCO World Heritage status. In other words, the axolotl lives right in the middle of one of humanity's oldest surviving examples of sustainable farming engineering. It prefers cool water, between 14 and 20 digs, in densely vegetated canals. Vegetation that's critical both for hiding and for laying eggs. This extremely narrow distribution is one of the species' greatest vulnerabilities. It has no natural population anywhere else on the planet, making it entirely dependent on the waters of a single city, and extremely exposed to any single pollution event or shift in climate. Mexico City sits roughly 2,200 meters above sea level, which keeps the canal waters cool year-round. That coolness appears to be an important environmental factor for the axolotl's metabolism and thyroid activity. A carnivorous predator, the axolotl feeds on worms, insect larvae, small crustaceans, fish, and mollusks, and has even been observed preying on other axolotls, particularly smaller juveniles, which is why young axolotls are usually raised separately from one another. Rather than actively chasing prey, it lies in ambush, and the instant it senses movement in the water, it snaps its prey into its mouth with a sudden suction strike, a motion so fast it's almost impossible to follow with the naked eye. Its teeth are built for gripping, not tearing, so it typically swallows prey whole. It's more active and secretive at night, preferring to hide among plants or rocks during the day. A nocturnal habit that serves both to avoid predators and to hunt more effectively. The axolotl is largely solitary and non-social. Individuals typically only come together during the breeding season. Part of the reason for this solitary lifestyle is its own aggressive, sometimes cannibalistic tendency toward members of its own species, especially when space and food are limited. It has a highly developed lateral line system for sensing movement in water, allowing it to detect the faintest vibrations and locate prey or threats without relying on sight at all. It also uses a well-developed chemical sensing system to distinguish other individuals, prey, or danger from dissolved chemical cues in the water. Living entirely underwater, it can breathe through its lungs as well as its gills and skin, giving it the flexibility to remain motionless underwater for extended periods. Despite its apparent stillness, laboratory studies show axolotls can remember simple spatial learning tasks and learn to navigate maze-like layouts. Its way of moving is notable too. Rather than swimming, it often walks along the pond floor using its four legs in sequence, likely the origin of the misleading nickname Mexican walking fish, even though, as noted, it isn't a fish at all, but an amphibian. This is the feature that makes the axolotl the most heavily studied vertebrate in science, a nearly limitless capacity for regeneration. An axolotl that loses a leg, its tail, or even part of its spinal cord can regrow that structure, fully functional, within a matter of weeks, without leaving so much as a scar. Here's how it works. At the wound site, a mass of unspecialized cells forms called a blastoma. These cells essentially reset their identity and transform into whatever tissue is missing: bone, muscle, nerve, or skin, rebuilding the lost body part from scratch. And this isn't a one-time trick. Axolotls can regrow the same limb again and again, even after repeated loss, making them truly exceptional in the animal kingdom. Research shows this ability isn't limited to limbs and tails either. Axolotls can regenerate damaged portions of heart muscle, parts of the upper and lower jaw, and even sections of brain tissue. Scientists have studied the axolotl for years, hoping to adapt this extraordinary repair mechanism for human medicine. Since humans heal by forming scar tissue, while the axolotl rebuilds the original tissue exactly as it was, a property considered especially promising for spinal cord injury and paralysis research. Part of the reason seems to lie in how differently its immune system behaves. The strong inflammatory response that produces scarring in humans is far more measured in the axolotl, giving cells the time and environment needed to rebuild without leaving a trace. Because of this significance, most research labs and universities worldwide source their axolotls from a single, centralized genetic stock center, effectively turning the species into a true standard model organism for the scientific community. Research also suggests axolotls may be strikingly more resistant to cancer than humans. When its genome was fully sequenced in 2018, science hit another record. At the time, it was the largest genome ever fully sequenced, roughly 32 billion base pairs, more than 10 times the size of the human genome. Somewhere within that enormous store of genetic information, scientists believe, lies the key to unlocking the secret of regeneration. Another feature that makes the axolotl extraordinary is that, in a very real sense, it never grows up. Most salamander species, even the axolotl's close relative, the tiger salamander, pass through a stage where an aquatic larval form transforms into a land-capable, lung-breathing adult. This process is called metamorphosis. The axolotl skips that final step entirely. It retains its external gills, its tail fin, and its fully aquatic lifestyle, reaching sexual maturity and becoming capable of reproducing, while still, technically, in larval form. Scientists call this condition neoteny, or paedomorphosis. Put simply, the axolotl can be thought of as an adult that remains a child forever. This happens because the thyroid hormone responsible for triggering growth, thyroxine, is suppressed. In a lab setting, it's possible to force metamorphosis by injecting this hormone. Within weeks, the axolotl loses its gills, switches to lung breathing, and becomes capable of moving onto land. But here's a finding that surprised researchers: axolotls that undergo metamorphosis, even though they can now walk on land, lose most of their extraordinary regenerative ability. And this unnatural transformation generally shortens their lifespan as well. In other words, the species' superpower appears to be directly tied to the very fact that it never grows up, as if staying eternally young comes with both a cost and a reward. Breeding season generally falls between late winter and early spring. The male performs a kind of courtship dance, waving his tail and lower body to attract a female, likely releasing pheromones in the process. Mating requires no physical contact. The male deposits a packet of sperm, called a spermatophore, in the water, which the female draws into her body to fertilize her eggs. A single female can lay anywhere from 100 to 1,000 eggs in one clutch. Each egg is individually attached to a plant and coated in a protective layer of jelly, which offers some protection against predators and fungal infection. Hatchlings emerge already looking like miniature axolotls. Since there's no metamorphic stage, there's no dramatic difference in appearance between larva and adult, only a difference in size. They reach sexual maturity at around 1 year old. In the wild, they live 10 to 15 years. Under human care, some records show lifespans exceeding 20 years, a long lifespan that also allows researchers to run long-term experiments. In the wild, axolotls are preyed on by large fish and certain bird species, but today, the greatest threat this species faces isn't a natural predator. It's human-driven change. As Mexico City expanded, the waters of the Xochimilco canals became polluted, and much of the area was filled in or drained. Even more damaging has been the introduction of invasive species like tilapia and carp, brought in over the years for fish farming. These species eat axolotl eggs and young while also competing directly for limited food, and many researchers consider these invasive species an even bigger driver of the population's collapse than habitat loss itself. As a defense mechanism, an axolotl under threat can deliberately shed its tail or a limb, a strategy called autotomy, distracting the predator while it escapes, only to simply regrow the lost part afterward. Its skin also carries mild toxic secretions, which may deter some predators. Scientists have carried out regular population surveys in the Xochimilco canals for decades, and the data reveal that the collapse hasn't been a slow decline, but a dramatic, accelerating drop over just the past few decades, pointing to a narrowing window for conservation efforts. On the IUCN Red List, the axolotl is classified as critically endangered, with a population trend that is clearly decreasing. The most recent wild surveys suggest the number of individuals remaining in nature is now measured in the hundreds, by some estimates even fewer, an extraordinarily fragile position for a species with only one natural habitat on the entire planet. Within the Xochimilco ecosystem, the axolotl plays an important balancing role in the food chain, preying on small invertebrates and fish. There's a striking paradox here. The vast majority of axolotls alive in the world today aren't in the wild at all, but in laboratories and home aquariums. By some estimates, more than 1 million are kept as pets alone. So, while the species teeters on the edge of extinction in the wild, in captivity, it may be one of the most widely bred salamanders on the planet. Conservation efforts include artificial protected canal sections known as refugios, control of invasive fish species, and water quality improvement projects. Encouraging local farmers to return to traditional Chinampa agriculture is also seen as an important part of this conservation strategy. The axolotl's story reaches back long before any laboratory, deep into Aztec mythology. According to legend, Xolotl was the god of fire and lightning, also associated with death and the evening star, known as the twin brother of the feathered serpent god, Quetzalcoatl. The story goes that when the gods required a sacrifice, Xolotl tried to escape being sacrificed himself by transforming, first into a maize plant, then into an agave, and finally leaping into the water and turning into a salamander to hide. This is exactly where the animal's name comes from. In the Nahuatl language, atl means water, while Xolotl is both the god's name and a word for monster or strange creature. So the name literally translates to water monster. This mythological origin carries a striking parallel to the species' real escape from death theme, much like how it escapes cellular death by regrowing its own organs. In modern times, the axolotl was featured on the design of Mexico's 50-peso banknote in 2022, was introduced to millions of players through a 2021 Minecraft update, and has been at the center of a massive, ongoing social media wave since 2023, particularly a home decor and aesthetic trend built entirely around the creature, with related hashtags racking up hundreds of millions of views in just a few years. That momentum shows no sign of slowing even in 2026, with major retail chains expanding their product lines around the trend. Beneath this popularity lies more than simple cuteness. For many fans, buying or sharing axolotl-themed items has become a small gesture of solidarity with an endangered species, a symbolic bond with a creature fighting for its survival. Legend says an Aztec god transformed into a salamander to escape death. And perhaps the most striking fact of all is that the real axolotl actually seems to pull this off, rebuilding its own cells, organs, even part of its brain, again and again. Yet, this remarkable creature has been pushed to the edge of extinction in its one true home, perhaps one of science's greatest ironies, one of its most valuable research partners, and one of the planet's most fragile species, all at once. Maybe the real lesson here is this: breeding a creature by the thousands in a lab isn't the same as protecting it in the wild. In our next video, we're leaving the water behind for a completely different world. Don't miss the animal waiting for us there.